Good morning, folks. Glad you could join us today. I'm so excited that this weekend we get to worship together in church, although I would be just a tad happier if I could teach this in front of some real live people rather than in front of my iPad again. But I am so excited that we can meet together and sing together. Singing in tape services with my wife and I together, it's not the same as all of us coming together and singing, and I mean, I do lots of singing while I'm driving along in my truck, but to getting together and to be able to sing together and to worship together and to, we are still going to be doing some social distancing, so we can't do the handshakes and the hugs like I'd like to, but it'd be nice to get together and praise God together and worship together, and I am so looking forward to doing that this weekend. That will be awesome. All right, I just have a few questions for you. Again, this would be a whole lot better if I was talking to some real life people and I get some feedback, but who do you trust? Who do you trust? And why do you trust that particular individual or those particular individuals? Why do you trust them? And a third question would be, when do you trust them? All right. We're going to look at two people today from God's Word, and they have two totally different types of trust of who they are trusting, but both trusted, all right, and both sought the approval of who they trusted. That's what we do. We'll look at that a little bit more as we go on, but they both sought the approval of those people that they trusted, and they both reaped the results of who they trusted. We're going to look at, like I said, two individuals, and we're going to start with a man that we've been looking at quite a bit over the last few weeks, and that's Elisha. Elisha, the man of God, the prophet of God, who took the place of Elijah in Elijah's ministry, and he was a totally different person than Elijah was in that in the type of ministry that he did and so forth. They seem to be, Elijah seemed to be more the bear and the go get him, and Elisha seemed to be more set back, although he was, quite capable of calling down people if they were sinning. But they just seemed to be a two different personality types. All right, and as we take your Bibles, please, and go to the book of 2 Kings, is where we've been studying together, and into chapter 8, and we're going to look at Elisha. Elisha in chapter 8 in verse number 7, it says, "And Elisha came to Damascus, and Ben-Hadad, the king of Syria, was sick, and it was told him, saying, The man of God is come hither." Why would Elisha go to Damascus? Damascus is, we hear Paul going on the road to Damascus, but that was a different time, all right? This is way before. Damascus is in Syria. It is northeast of Israel. We've got Dan in the top north of the country of Israel, but on the other side we have the half tribe of Manasseh that was there on the eastern side of the Jordan. But it was east and north of that to get to Damascus, and we think about Elisha and with the Syrians with them. We know that is it possible that Elisha was going to see Naaman? Remember, Naaman was the commander, the general in the army who had the leprosy, and he came and Elisha healed him with his 7 times when he dipped in the river Jordan. And he went back, and remember that Naaman had that little maid that lived in his house that was a slave that they had captured from Israel, okay? And maybe was Elisha going there to see Naaman? It's a possibility. I don't know that that's why he was there, but that's a distinct possibility. But if you remember, as we look at Elisha, Ben-Hadad, the king of Syria, when he had been sending raids in there, and every time he went to send a raid in, Elisha told the king, "Don't go there, or get your men out of there, or refortify that spot, because they're coming in to fortify that." And Ben-Hadad thought that what we're going to do is we're going to capture Elisha, and we'll make him we'll bring him here, and then he can't tell the king of Israel all of our plans. And so they, a while, not that far previous, had Elisha, the Syrians wanted to capture him and to bring him back. And in fact, what happened was Elisha captured the Syrian army that came in and without a weapon, and he brought them into Samaria, as we saw, and they fed them and they released them, all right? But these Syrians they're like sworn enemies against Elisha. They wanted to catch him, all right? So why would Elisha want to go to Syria? You know, it's possible, all right? There are lots of possibilities as to why he went, but you know, you would think that Elisha would be afraid. Would you not be afraid if a whole country was after you and they sent their armies to get you? Wouldn't you be afraid? And you know, we look at Elisha and we look at the prophets of God, and sometimes we get the false idea that God's prophets had this great power, these powers, and they could use them at their will to do whatever they wanted to do. And that's not the case. God was doing miracles through these men, okay? But it's not that, we understand, okay, God's doing the miracle, but these men could do it whenever they want. Well, no, all right? God was not at the beck and call of the prophets whenever they wanted to use this special power. It was the other way around. The prophets that were really used of God, all right? And there was times when some prophets weren't, like Jonah, you know, where he wasn't being used of God, and God wanted to use him, and Jonah refused to be used of him, all right? But in prophets that were submitted, like Elisha, all right, they were at God's beck and call. And they were able to do these things because they were in such communication with God that when God wanted them to do something, they were there and they were willing to be used. Not so much able, all right? They didn't have the power, all right? It was God that had the power, but they were willing to be tools in his hands, to be instruments, to be used of him, all right? I think that Christians often get this same idea that God is there to fulfill our needs and our wants and to make us happy. And often that seems to be how we pray. You know, God, give me this, and I need this, and you need to help me with this, rather than what am I here to do for God? What am I here, God, when I get on my knees, am I praying that, God, what is it that you want for me to do? What do you want me to do? You know, why did Elisha go there? I'll give you a possibility, and again, it's just a possibility, and I don't know, to be honest, but I'm just going to give you a possibility. Do you remember when Elijah was in the cave, and where you know, saw the thunder and the lightning and so forth, and God finally spoke to Elijah with a still small voice, and he gave Elijah 3 things that he was supposed to do. I'm going to read the verses for you. It's in 1 Kings. You can turn there if you want. 1 Kings chapter 19. In verses 15 and 16, God speaking, it says, "And the Lord said unto him, Go, return on thy way to the wilderness of Damascus, and when thou comest, anoint Hazael to be king over Syria. And Jehu the son of Nimshi shalt thou anoint to be king over Israel, and Elisha the son of Shaphat of Abel-Meholah shalt thou anoint to be prophet in thy room." Now there's no actual record of Elijah going to anoint Hazael to be the king over Syria. Whether he did or whether he didn't, or whether that was passed on to Elisha after he had Elisha, we're not really sure, but there's no record of it. It doesn't mean that he didn't, but as it seems that Hazael had no idea as we move on through our passage here. So it may have been something that Elijah had put on to Elisha to do after he had left, to anoint these 2 guys, all right? And it seems rather odd that a man of God is going to anoint another king, not of Israel, not even of the northern kingdom or of the southern kingdom, but the king of Syria. But that's what God told Elijah to do, all right? It's possible that Elisha was going there to do that, to finish that job that Elijah had told him to do it. All right, but again, none of that is recorded. I'm just throwing out some possibilities here. But you know, the real thing is he's going to this place, this enemy territory, that other than for reasons of God telling him to go, he has no business going there, but he's going there. Okay, and it's obvious here. All right, we don't know for sure why he went, but what is clearly obvious for us is this: is that in this case and in all other instances we've looked at concerning Elisha, where was Elisha's trust? Elisha's trust was in God. Regardless of what God told him to do, Elisha was one of those good prophets, unlike Jonah and other ones at times. And he was a man and he sinned. Now, I'm saying that he's perfect, but he's one of those good prophets that had his trust firmly placed in God. Now, I looked up a definition of the word trust, and it says a firm belief in the reliability, truth, ability, or strength of someone or something. Okay? Elisha's trust in God was even more than that, and I'll share how I've tweaked this to fit Elisha in just a few minutes here. But he walked into Damascus unashamed and ready for whatever God had planned for him, okay? Ben-Hadad, the king at this time, he was sick, and he sends his trusty friend Hazael, he thinks he's his trusty friend, to meet him, all right? And take a look, if you will, still there in 2 Kings, if you go back there from 1 Kings, 2 Kings chapter 8 and verse number 9. And it says, so Hazael went to meet him and took a present with him, even of every good thing of Damascus, 40 camels burden, and came and stood before him and said, thy son Ben-Hadad, king of Syria, has sent me to thee, saying, shall I recover of this disease? He sends him, the word gets back, as I read that verse earlier, that Elisha, the man of God, has come into Syria, okay? There was no hiding it. He wasn't trying to disguise what he was doing or trying to sneak in so that he could see Naaman or whatever other reason there was that he was going there. But he walked in there, plain as day. They knew who he was. The word got to the king that he is there. The king sends Hazael to him because the king is sick. And he wants to know, he says, ask the man of God. Interesting. What's interesting here is Ben-Hadad was an idol worshiper. All right. You remember that when Naaman was healed, he said, you know, the king will take me into the temple of his God there, and he'll lean on me that I have to kneel there. So he worshipped this idol, but when it come down to life and death, he wants to know from the real God. He wasn't asking his idol. He wasn't sending somebody to talk to his idol and say, am I going to recover? No, he wants to know from the only real God. All right. And he sends his messenger here, Hazael, to Elisha to ask him whether or not he's going to recover from this disease he has. And Elisha says to him, and it's in verse 10, and it's kind of a yes and no answer. Yes, he's going to recover from the disease, but, you know, let me read it to you for it. Let me read it for you, okay? And Elisha, verse 10, said unto him, go say unto him, thou mayest certainly recover. Howbeit, the Lord hath showed me that he shall surely die. It's like one of those good news, bad news jokes. You know, the wife comes home and she says to her husband, she says, honey, I have some good news and some bad news about the car. The husband's looking at her and he says, tell me the good news. She says, the airbags work. All right. But, you know, here he is. He's telling them, you know, here's the good news and the bad news. The good news is you're not gonna die from this disease. You're gonna die from something else instead. All right. The disease won't kill you, but you're still gonna die. After Elisha tells Hazael this, he looks at him. It's like he's staring at him for a while, and God is speaking to Elisha. And God reveals to Elisha what Hazael is going to do. And Elisha bursts into tears. And Hazael says, what's going on here? Like, why are you weeping? And Elisha says, because I know what you are going to do to my people Israel. You're going to kill the young men with the sword. You're going to slaughter the children. You're going to tear up the women with the pregnant women, and you're going to burn the cities, that their strongholds, and so forth. And Hazael is just, he doesn't know any of this. All right, and he has no way of knowing any of this. He says in verse 13, it says, and Hazael said, but what is thy servant, a dog, that he should do this great thing? And Elisha answered, before I get to that part, he says, what he's referring to here when he says, am I a dog? Partially he's saying, like, I am nothing in the kingdom. I don't have any authority to do that kind of thing to Israel. And Elisha says there in the second half of verse 13, he says, and Elisha answered, the Lord has shown me that thou shalt be king over Syria. Hazael returns to the king Ben-Hadad, and he only tells him half the message. The good news, the airbags, they work. No, the good news. He says, Elisha says you should recover from this disease. The next day, you wonder what went on during that night. What kind of thoughts went through the head of Hazael? That lust for power, that lust for fame, that lust for fortune. The next day, he goes in, his king is still weak with this sickness that he's not going to die of. And Hazael takes a cloth, and he dips this cloth in water and makes it soaking wet, and he puts it over the face of his king, and he kills him. And he becomes the king. I'm not worried about Hazael. He's not the guy we're really concerned about here. It's Elisha. Think of what Elisha has done here, okay? God is going to punish Israel because Israel is doing some wicked, vile things under the king here, okay? Under all of the kings of the northern kingdom. Remember, Elisha is stuck. He's stuck in the northern kingdom, all right? I think he'd rather be down in the southern kingdom. Maybe, sometimes he's down there, but he's up in this northern kingdom trying to get these kings to do what's right. And they're not. And God is going to punish Israel because they are worshiping all of these idols. And even use Elisha to possibly put the thought of what's going to happen and what he can do in the mind of this evil Hazael, who's now the king of Syria. Because God commanded him to do that. Did he like doing that? He was weeping. But you know what? Elisha trusted his God even when he didn't understand it. Even when, it hurt him. It's easy for us to trust God when we understand why he's doing what he's doing. But, it's easy for us to trust when it makes us happy with the choices that God has for us. But here he is, and he is asked to do something that he doesn't understand, nor does it make him happy. But what is Elisha doing? He's trusting God, because Elisha's trust wasn't just a firm belief in the reliability, truth, ability, or strength of someone or something. I've tweaked it for Elisha. Elisha, it is the confidence. His trust is the confidence in the reliability, the absolute truth, and the total omnipotence of his God. That's what Elisha is. It's not just a firm belief. It's a total confidence. Whether he likes the outcome, whether he likes what he has to do or not, it doesn't matter. Elisha's trust is in God, that this is what is supposed to happen. This is what is right. This is what is good, even though I can't see the good. Let's look at guy number 2. Guy number 2 is a young man named Jehoram. Now it can get a little confusing when we're looking at these kings, because there was a king in northern Israel named Jehoram, and now we're looking at a king from the southern, from Judah, whose name is also Jehoram, and they reign around the same time. There's also Ahaziah, they reign around the same time. King, north king, south king, so it can get a little confusing sometimes when we're reading, but we're going to look at the fella, the king who was the king of Judah, all right, where a little less than half of all the kings of Judah were good kings, all right? And here's Jehoram. Take a look in verse, still there in 2 Kings chapter 8. Let's look down at verse number 16. It says, and in the 5th year of Joram, the son of Ahab, see, or Joram's also Jehoram, okay? Just depends on when. It's kind of like I said before, it's like Stephen, all right? I don't want to put my name with this guy, but at any rate, okay? So it says, let's change it to another name. No, I'm just kidding. All right, and the 5th year of Joram, the son of Ahab, king of Israel, Jehoshaphat, being the king of Judah, Jehoram, the son of Jehoshaphat, king of Judah, began to reign. So here we have this young man named Jehoram, who is the son of Jehoshaphat. He's 32 years old at this time, and Jehoshaphat makes him a co-regent, or he becomes the king alongside of Jehoshaphat before Jehoshaphat dies. Now, this young man has all the advantages that you could imagine, all right? Is he poor? His father's the king, all right? He has wealth upon wealth upon wealth. There is no need of anything physically that he needs. He has got all kinds of wealth. How about his family? He comes from a great family. His grandfather was the king Asa, who was a very good king. He made mistakes too, but in 1 Kings chapter 15 and verse 11, this is what God inspired as the epitaph of such for Asa. It says, and Asa did that which was right in the eyes of the Lord, as did David his father. All right, as did David his father. He did what was right, okay? That was his grandfather. His father was Jehoshaphat. Look at 2 Chronicles chapter 17 and verse 3. This is what God says about Jehoshaphat. And the Lord was with Jehoshaphat because he walked in the first ways of his father David and sought not unto Baalim. All right, his family was godly roots, all right? Two of the good kings of Judah were his grandfather and his father. So here he is, okay? His position. So we've got all the wealth that he needs. He's got a good, solid, godly family. And his position, he's made king, all right? Before his father died, a few years before his father died, they reigned together, all right? And he had every advantage that an individual could have, okay? But the point is this: we choose who we trust. We choose who we trust. And those that you trust are the ones that you seek their approval from, okay? Elisha trusted God. Elisha sought the approval of God. What about Jehoram? What about Jehoram? We see right after Jehoshaphat's death, Jehoram has already been made the king. And as he is king, one of the first acts that he does after he becomes king shows where his real heart is. Take a look, please, in your Bibles to 2 Chronicles chapter 21. Only mentions a couple of things about him here in 2 Kings, but in 2 Chronicles goes into a lot more detail about Jehoram. And it says in chapter 21 and verse 4, 2 Chronicles, it says, now when Jehoram was risen up to the kingdom of his father, he strengthened himself and slew all his brethren with the sword, and divers also of the princes of Israel. He killed all his brothers, just in case one of them wanted to try to take over to be king, or what other reason he had in his mind. He killed all of his family, all right? All of his brothers. With all of these advantages that Jehoram had, the godly examples that were in his life, who did he choose to trust? It's his choice. All right? It's his choice. If you still got your finger there in 2 Kings rather, chapter 8, verse 18, it says, "And he walked in the way of the kings of Israel, as did the house of Ahab, for the daughter of Ahab was his wife, and he did evil in the sight of the Lord." His wife was Ahab's daughter, Jezebel's daughter. Her name was Athaliah. But he chose to walk in the ways of the kings of Israel, rather than in the ways of his father and his grandfather and David the king. And he was in the godly nation of Judah, and yet he made his choice. And his choice was who he was going to follow, who he was going to trust, who he wanted to be like, and who he wanted them to like him. And it was Ahab's family, all right? You know, one commentator that I read said, "For men are according to the company they converse with." In other words, we are like who we want to talk to, all right? Those whose opinion we value most are the ones that will influence us the most and who we will most pattern ourselves after. Those ones that we want to listen to, those ones that we want to hear their opinions, those are the ones we're going to pattern our life after, okay? That's what Jehoram did. That's what he did. He just, these are the people that he clung to. They were ungodly people, and because of that, this is the kind of king he was, and he didn't last in his kingdom very long, all right? But God kept him there. You know why? Because after he killed all of his brothers, the seed had to come from him in order to maintain the kingly line from David. All right? And that was a promise, because God is faithful. God is faithful to keep that which he has promised. But you know, you might be saying, there might be some folks out there that say, well, there's nobody around that I really trust. I really only go by myself, and I trust my own instincts more than what other people will say. I trust my gut, or a little cliche that's more popular now is I follow my heart. Okay? Following your heart can be a very dangerous thing. I'm going to quote for you part of a great movie. Watch it every year on December the 24th, all right? And it's the old 1951, I believe, version of Christmas Carol. But there's a little discussion between Jacob Marley and Ebenezer Scrooge. And when Jacob Marley comes before Scrooge and Scrooge doesn't believe who he is, all right? Marley says to him, he says, "Why do you doubt your senses?" Scrooge says, "Because a little thing affects them. A slight disorder of the stomach makes them cheats. You may be an undigested bit of beef, a blot of mustard, a crumb of cheese, a fragment of an underdone potato. There's more of gravy than grave about you." Just kind of a goofy movie. But you know what? There's truth in this. Not that I'm putting this above the Bible, don't get me wrong here. But the truth is, we can be swayed in our own gut feeling, or our own following our heart can fool us. That's what Scrooge was saying. I could be fooled by what I see, because you might just be a piece of underdone potato. All right? The wisest man that ever lived, that God granted him wisdom, put it this way. So it holds more bearing than Ebenezer Scrooge and Charles Dickens. In Proverbs chapter 3 and verse 5, it says, "Trust in the Lord with all thine heart, and lean not unto thine own understanding. In all thy ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct thy paths." You know where our trust needs to be? Not in those around us, although we do need to trust some people, but we need to trust godly people. We need to emulate godly men, godly women, all right? That's who we should be spending the bulk of our time with. All right, when the time that we have the choice to to spend time with. We should be choosing to spend time with people that love God, with people that are trying to live for God, with people that are spending time in God's Word, trying to know what His will is for their lives. That's who we should be around. That's who we should be conversing with. As I said, that one commentator said, those who we converse with are those that we're going to emulate. All right, and Elisha's trust was the confidence in the reliability, the absolute truth, and the total omnipotence of his God. You see, Elisha trusted God even when he didn't understand. That's a tough time to do that. We don't understand why. We don't understand what we're doing. It just doesn't make sense. But God says, this is what I want. You got to trust me. Elisha trusted him. Elisha didn't trust him when it just made him happy. It hurt him to tell Hazael, you know what? You're going to kill all these young people in Israel. The young men, you're going to burn their strongholds. You're going to kill the young men with a sword. You're going to rip up the children. You're going to tear up the women with child. It breaks my heart what you're going to do to my people. But he told them. He told them that because that was from God. He trusted God even when it hurt. Hebrews chapter 10, verse 23 says this. He said, this is Paul speaking, I believe. It says, let us hold fast the profession of our faith without wavering, for he is faithful that promised. God is faithful. We need to trust him even when we don't understand. Even when it hurts, we need to trust God. We serve a great God. I trust that you'll be in church worshiping him if you at all possibly can this weekend. Because it's been so long since we've done that. But you know what? God, he deserves our trust. He deserves our worship. And we are privileged to be able to have a relationship with the God who created all of this. I don't know if you can hear the birds in the background. They're tweeting outside on my backyard there. The windows are open and see the sun is shining in here. But, you know, we serve a great God. And we need to trust him, even when it hurts, even when we don't understand. But we know that all things work together for good to them that love God, to them who are the called according to his purpose. We can trust God. We serve a great and mighty and powerful, omnipotent, omniscient God.